him a shot to do what?
What is going on, everybody? This is the Shy Kid Podcast. You are listening to Mike Hughes from Give Us a Shot Network. It is April 11th, 2024. And we got some stuff to talk about. And there's not a lot of things that I really want to talk about right now as it pertains to the Chicago Cubs and the current state of Kyle Hendricks, but we're going to have to talk about it. We're going to have to break it down. We're going to have these realistic conversations that a lot of us really don't want to have at this point in time. We want to hold on to legends forever. And what Kyle Hendricks and the 2016 Chicago Cubs were able to do for not only the Chicago Cubs organization, but the city of Chicago will never be forgotten. So we're going to be talking about the Chicago Cubs and their West Coast Blues trip. It hasn't started off really well. We're 1-2 right now after finishing the series against the San Diego Padres, which were the Slam Diego Padres this past week. So we're going to break all that down and more. Losing an 8-0 lead in game one, really recovering and bouncing back well in game two, and game three just absolutely obliterated. So there's so many different things we can talk about. Let's start with the first conversation here. We're going to talk about the 8-0 lead. The 8-0 lead in game one, you have Javier Assad on the mound. He's dealing. He's having a great day, obviously filling in for Jameson Taillon to start the season. He's been such a huge part of this ball club. The Cubs end up losing 8-9, up 8-0 throughout the entire game. It was really unfortunate to see just the Cubs defense and overall just Jose Cuas allow them to get back into position to be able to have success. It's really unfortunate the way that went down, and you're looking at it from the perspective of an offensive production, and you're like, man, the Cubs on all cylinders were just great. The only ones that didn't have a hit in this game were Nick Madrigal and Garrett Cooper, and they didn't start the game. Michael Bush didn't really have a day, but everybody else on all cylinders was just absolutely incredible. Javier Assad in 5 innings pitched had 3 hits allowed, 2 earned runs, 3 walks, and 7 Ks, almost tying his career. So, you're looking at that and you're like, man, there's no way the Cubs don't win this game. The bullpen comes in, Jose Cuas in 0.1 innings pitched, allows 3 hits, 2 earned runs, kind of getting them back into that game, making it 4-8. And then obviously Luke Little, Hector Neris, and Albert Alzolay, the dagger with Fernando Tatis Jr. hitting a two home run, 2 RBI home run. It's just unfortunate. It was an unfortunate way to end that ball game. I will say this, as a baseball fan, I was watching that matchup kind of develop, and you're watching, Fernando Tatis Jr. on the side, he's on deck, he's in the on deck circle, just watching Adbert and calculating the way he moves and how he presents himself off from an offensive perspective. And you're like, man, it's going to happen. This is the moment that it's going to happen, because we know Adbert's been struggling since the very beginning of the season against the Rangers in the opener in Texas. Adbert hasn't really been able to figure it out as well. So I see a lot of people killing Jose Cuas, and I definitely understand where that's coming from, but you also have to look at it from the perspective of, the entire bullpen from top to bottom really hasn't been the best versions of themselves. So it's definitely important to point that out, because as much as Jose hasn't been great, and he hasn't been great. You're trading Nelson Velasquez for him. And shout out Velasquez a year ago today. He hits the grand slam, and then David Ross never played him again. But he goes on with the Kansas City Royals, and he's hitting 25 plus home runs a year. That's real. You know what I mean? And that was something he wasn't able to do here because he didn't get the opportunity to do so. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, man. But, this bullpen definitely does have to get it together. They have to figure out what's going on. The starting rotation, in spite of not having Justin Steele and Jameson Taillon, are actually doing very well. And we talk about game number 2. We're going to fly through these games really quickly, and then we're going to break it down one by one. You look at game number 2 with Ben Brown making his first major league start. Shout out to him. We just talked to him this morning. We're hopefully going to get him on the pod very soon to talk about his Cubs stint so far. But, you look at game 2, Cubs win 5-1. Christopher Morel with a grand slam off Joe Musgrove. It was just a great performance from top to bottom. Ben Brown, 4.2 innings pitched, 3 hits allowed, 0 earned runs, 1 walk, and 5 Ks. Drew Smyly comes in, he gives up 1 earned run and 2 Ks on the day. Yency Almonte doesn't give up any runs. He gives up 2 strikeouts. Mark Leiter was solid. And then Adbert Alzolay was able to close out that game. But you look at that and you go, okay, cool. It's a 1-1 series. We still have to take the series. This is very important. This is very pivotal for the Chicago Cubs at this point in time, because, the Milwaukee Brewers are hot. That's just real. Like we didn't expect them to be as hot as they are right now. The Pittsburgh Pirates, who, if you're following the channel, if you've been watching Give Us a Shot for a while, if you've been watching the Shy Kid on TikTok or wherever you may listening to this, I've been very vocal about. I think the Pirates are ready. I think they're up next, especially after acquiring Joey Bart, especially with Paul Skeens on the rise. He'll be up probably sometime very soon. Jackson Holiday just got called up, so you would imagine Paul Skeens is probably not too far behind him. But I'm excited nonetheless to be able to see what they're doing. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. You got O'Neill Cruz, you got a bunch of dogs. It's gonna be really exciting to see what's going on. Really quick, I just want to throw out one of these comments. David Burns, I appreciate you for tuning in, man. Watching from Cedar Hill, Texas. That's pretty cool. So we appreciate you being here, David, and everybody else tuning in. If you're new here, smack that follow button on Give Us a Shot Network, or you can check out the Shy Kid podcast or the Shy Kid on TikTok and Instagram. We go live every single day. We make content every single day. Germ and I did a really great bit last night talking about Miguel Rojas and Jazz Chisholm Jr. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. But you look at this Cubs team, and going into the third game, you're like, okay, well, you should have already won the series. You should have took the first two games, but it is what it is. Kyle Hendricks is on the bump. You're hoping he has a fresher start. And it's just an absolute disaster. Team loses 2-10. Kyle Hendricks gives up 7 earned runs in 5 innings pitched with 9 hits and 2 strikeouts, 0 walks. Daniel Palencia, 2 earned runs, 3 walks, and 3 Ks in 2 innings pitched. And Jose Cuas gives up a run as well with 2 Ks in 1 inning pitched. Yeah, it's just on all cylinders, man. It just wasn't great whatsoever. The storyline really was, the bullpen giving it up or the starters giving it up, and the offense has been rolling. But the offense started off very hot. I think we were one of the best offensive teams in baseball to start the season, if I'm being completely honest. I mean, our base running was second to none. We had bats flying. I mean, guys were absolutely great coming out the gate. We're kind of having this come down to earth moment, come to Jesus moment of like, okay, well, it's not going to be like this the entire season. So what do we have to do? How do we regroup? And we heard Kyle Hendricks very vocal, talking about it in post game, like he doesn't want to let this team down. He feels like he's not being the best version of himself. And it's really unfortunate to see something like that, especially from a guy like Kyle, because we understand, what Kyle means for this organization, what Kyle's meant for the Chicago Cubs. Such a cornerstone piece, a Cy Young caliber player in 2016. What did you finish top 5, top 3 in Cy Young voting in 2016 alongside John Lester? Jake Arrieta obviously winning in 2015. So there were so many great players, so many great pieces to that rotation of the Cubs dynasty, quote unquote. You want to call it the glory days, whatever anybody wants to call it. You know what I mean? For myself, man, I don't call it a dynasty. I would say they had a good run. It was a great run. 3 NLCS appearances, 1 World Series championship. It was a solid run. John Lackey's added to that as well. And there was just so many great faces a part of the organization. And Kyle's the last guy standing. Kyle Hendricks is the last remaining player from the 2016 World Series Chicago Cubs. I think at the end of the day, man, Jed Hoyer understands that this is likely the last dance. I don't expect him to get DFA'd anytime soon just because Jameson Tyone and Justin Steele are out. But, if June, July rolls around and this same stuff is happening and Javier Assad and Ben Brown are still having success, you might not, just cut them or trade them, but you definitely send them down to Iowa. You know what I mean? You definitely have to figure out what you want to do. Um, it's unfortunate that this is the way the story ends. I personally myself, and this is just me speaking freely. I felt like Kyle's, last dance should have been last year. There were multiple times he almost threw a no-hitter. He comes back in the middle of spring to really just kick it off and say, hey, listen, I'm back. I rehabbed in Iowa. I'm going to be the best version of myself. And he really was, to what he could produce for the Chicago Cubs. And I think it was a mistake to come back for this final year. And I think it was a mistake on Jed Hoyer's part to have him come back. Now, obviously, it makes sense from a perspective of, Jameson Tyone is out and Justin's out. So, like, who are you really going to call up at the end of the day? You know what I mean? Cade Horton isn't ready, and Hayden Wesneski, we've done that already. Cam Sanders, you know what I mean? I guess, you know what I mean? But you don't want to do that because then you're going to rush people's development the same way you almost rushed Ben's. Ben's slowly kind of bouncing back and becoming acclimated to the MLB level, but he was also in a better position. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'm really curious to see how it continues to develop for a guy like Kyle Hendricks. It's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate. There's really no other way around that to make sense for you guys. Like, I don't I don't know how we can sit here and justify Kyle Hendricks being a part of the starting rotation. And it reminds me so much of how I felt about Drew Smiley last year. Smiley, I was like, it's wraps. It's over. You know what I mean? Whatever was, but this is what it is. And I think we have to start to get used to that. And we have to get acclimated to that and understanding that, this is a new era of Chicago Cubs baseball. And, just because this is what you did in 2016 doesn't mean that that fits with what we're trying to do right now. And I think that's going to be key. That is going to be pivotal for what Jed Hoyer, Carter Hawkins, Craig Counsell, and the Chicago Cubs organization see fit for the foreseeable future. You want Cade Horton, you want Jordan Wicks, you want Shota Imanaga, Justin Steele, Ben Brown, and company to be able to be the faces of this rotation. And I do truly believe in this rotation. I believe in what we're trying to make right now, and I think there's so many different levels to it. But it's unfortunate, man. I don't know. I don't know how to really make sense of it. I don't know what to say to make it better. It's just really unfortunate that we're at this point right now with Kyle Hendricks to where, we don't even want him on the roster. And that's something I never really wanted to say. We kind of got to that point with Jason Hayward as well. And it's like, not that you overstayed your welcome, but that just this is where the story ends. You know what I mean? That's really what it comes down to. And it's okay. That's the game. I don't think anybody really leaves the game on the highest level. It's very rare that somebody gets a perfect send off, and not everybody's David Ross to the point to where you win a World Series and then you retire and then you're on Dancing with the Stars and then you come back and you manage the ball club. Like those are great storylines, but that's not how most ball players end their career. Most of them go down understanding that they just don't have it like that anymore. And, Dexter Fowler went through that. Javier Baez is currently going through that. Chris Bryant, et cetera, et cetera. The guys that we knew and loved aren't aren't who they were anymore, and that's a part of what happens, and it's just the game. There's the Christopher Morels, you know what I mean? There's the new cats on the block that are going to win the hearts of the team. Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson, Cody Bellinger. Like these guys are coming in and they're coming fast. And it's really unfortunate, man. But it's definitely one of those things where it's like, thank you for everything. And it's always going to be love on the north side for Kyle Hendricks. The professor will always be a legend. Him, Greg Maddux, so many others who played the game the way they did, so strategically, without high velocity and just high athleticism, just were absolutely painting corners. I mean, professional painters, they're artists, and what they're able to do is such a treasure in this game and isn't talked about enough. So I did want to take a little minute to just have that kind of segment to talk about it. But I also want to talk about something Jerm and I talked about last night. Jerm Edwards of Sports Talk, a absolutely phenomenal show on Give Us a Shot. So definitely check it out. But, you know, we heard from a few people that Christopher Morel was disrespectful in the way that he celebrated his grand slam. I myself was kind of lost in the sauce, I guess, when I heard that. I was kind of just looking at it like, what are we apologizing for? Like normally I'm pretty like, yeah, I'm not old school baseball, but I can also understand where somebody's coming from. You know what I mean? And when I saw that, this is the celebration of Christopher Morel after hitting the grand slam. You kind of just watch it and you look at it and you're like, right here, I guess that celebration was viewed as disrespectful. And you kind of just like you look at that and you're like, he's just having fun. You know what I mean? He's just having fun. He's praising God. He's doing whatever he has to do. I don't feel like you have to apologize in that moment. That was in game 2 with Ben Brown on the mound. I believe that was what, the 5th or 6th inning. I see no reason why you're apologizing to Joe Musgrove in that moment. And if anything, I mean, Joe, you should apologize to the San Diego Padres for throwing that pitch. Like, there's no real conversation to where I'm talking to Christopher Morel if I'm Craig Counsell after that game. Hey, you can't do that. Like, there's nothing that justifies that. So, I think, this go around, it's pretty depressing. We're on an off day coming off a loss. So that's never a good time. Kind of just have to sit in it. We're on our way to Seattle to face off against Julio Rodriguez and the Seattle Mariners. It's going to be interesting to see how the Cubs can bounce back. I mean, they're going up against a solid part of the rotation for the Mariners. This isn't their heart of their lineup, but it's definitely going to be tough. And then they go after the Arizona Diamondbacks after that. So, the West Coast trip has just begun. We're already 1-2. We should be 2-1. And it's just one of those conversations to where it's like, you beat the LA Dodgers in a series, you sweep the Rockies, you win 5 straight. You have such great momentum, especially with Patrick Wisdom, Jamison Tyone, and Justin Steele being out, Nico Horner, being in and out. He's on a slow start right now. And it's like you understand that this team isn't at the highest level that they can be yet. I'm really excited to see how they continue to grow, continue to develop as guys continue to get back in the lineup, as guys get acclimated to the 2024 season. But at the end of the day, man, what we're going to have to start seeing is consistent production from guys like Kyle, consistent production from Jamison Tyone when he comes back, because I don't know if I can trust this bullpen entirely. I think there's going to be moments where Jose Quas looks great, and there's going to be moments where, like we saw the other night, where he doesn't. And Adbert Alzolay, this is one of those guys who was so dominant in the closing role last year for the Chicago Cubs, and then this year to start the year, blowing the games against the Rangers, blowing a game almost against the Dodgers, blowing a game against the Padres. Like you're looking at that and you're like, Craig Counsell was vocal in spring training saying, I haven't deemed anybody the closer quite yet. Is that a reason why? And did he see something we didn't? So or is it just a slow start? So we'll have to see what happens. Again, it's way too early. When we're high, we're high. When we're low, we're low. Right now, we're somewhere in the middle. We understand that we can definitely take this series against the Seattle Mariners. I believe this Cubs roster right now, when healthy, can go tick for tack with anybody in the league. I truly do believe that. And I'm excited. So, this is what we got for you guys tonight. We're going to be talking Bears later on tomorrow. We'll be talking about the Seattle Mariners series. So make sure you check us out on Give Us a Shot Network. You can follow us on all social media platforms. You can check the bio in this episode, whether you're watching it on Facebook, YouTube. You can find all our social media platforms. You can always find me on here on the Shy Kid podcast. You could always give us a like, give us a subscribe, share this out to other Chicago sports fans who you think might like the podcast, or just sports fans in general, because we have so many different amazing shows from WNBA, NHL, NFL, NBA, MLB, and so much more. We have content all around the sun with so many different faces and people from around the league. Going to be a lot of fun to break down what we're doing. We got a lot more faces coming out soon. It's going to be fun. But until then, man, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you check me out on Instagram or on TikTok at theshy.kid. We make content every single day. Until then, go Cubs, baby. On to the next.